Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is looking at 3 traits that Leo people may exhibit that could be on the neurotic side. And this is a series that I'm doing. I'm a little bit ambivalent about the word neurotic because I don't think that some people know what that means, and I don't really have an easy way to define it. I can only feel what it means. I can't really tell you. Basically, I think it is craziness by basically sane people. So the things that they do that are psychologically quirky, but actually that's minimizing it. Sometimes it can be quite destructive, but that's where I'm going with this. And to me, it really is about being too self-absorbed and overthinking things so that you can't get out of your own head and you start to get a little bit goofy because you don't have that wide range perspective. You're just stuck in your own little world, and whatever it is that you're telling yourself about a particular situation. And anyway, let's just do this thing regardless. Number 1, the Leo person may be too in need of attention. And I think I'm going to include the moon with this. I could even include the ascendant, to be honest with you, but I'm going to say the sun and moon because the moon can even be coming from a greater sense of the shadow, I feel, because that's the emotional aspect of it. But the reason that there is a neurotic tendency with this is that getting attention doesn't mean anything in and of itself. So in other words, when people are trying to get other people to talk to them, to hear them, to pay attention, to watch them perform, because Leo is a natural performer. So for instance, the Leo person who is constantly doing things that are kind of like, I'm not saying acting out, although that can certainly happen when the person's very imbalanced. But let's just say the person, they're a frustrated performer and they, play an instrument, or like they play the guitar and they want everybody to be their constant audience, or they're just trying to be like a comedian and they want a captive audience. That can get very draining for other people. And it could simply be that they want to talk nonstop. I was going to say, if you have your moon like your moon in Gemini, then that could be the person who's like incessantly talking and dominating conversations so that they can get that kind of fix from others. That could be channeled in a positive way if the person is talented. They could, go into the theater, go to an open mic and sing their heart out or play an instrument. You can do those things, but to do it, to always need that, to go into a room and always be loud, or in some cases, the person may dress in a way to be attention-getting. And if the rising sign is Taurus, for instance, maybe they dress provocatively. I think I'm thinking mostly of a woman. I don't think men have that ability unless they have buttless chaps, I guess, leather chaps. Maybe that would work. But yeah, like a woman who has to be always grabbing that attention. And it's interesting because my sun is in Sagittarius and my rising sign is Taurus, because I was just talking about Taurus, and I have the moon in the 5th house, which is Leo's house. And I think that when I was younger, because the rising sign to me is more until you get to that first Saturn return, that I did do that. And I didn't really know that I was, I kind of knew, but I didn't think much of it, that I was dressing very provocatively, trying to be the hottest one in the room and everything like that. It wasn't, I don't feel, I mean, yeah, you could say it was out of insecurity, but I don't think it was out of, I really don't feel like I was being competitive per se. But I can see that sometimes we're looking for recognition. I'm saying we, but you might be looking for recognition, but you're going about it in the wrong way, in other words. So keep that in mind if you notice this about yourself. Number 2, using money to garner love. Leo is, by and large, because obviously it's, no sign is a monolith, but Leos are usually very generous. Generosity is a beautiful thing as long as it doesn't have any strings attached to it. And typically a Leo person will not be like, okay, I did this for you, now you have to do that for me. That might be more like a Taurus or something like that. But on an unconscious level, you may be wining and dining or buying them gifts. And this could be even in heterosexual relationships, a woman could be the one doing this. And subconsciously or unconsciously, you're doing it because you want somebody to love you. Now, that sounds rather insecure, and we always think that Leo people are just completely secure within themselves. Well, not necessarily true, because my feeling is that a lot of Leos have their professional life together and they tend to be successful in that arena, but their private life can sometimes be in shambles. And I think one reason why is that Leo people tend to be very sexually, I was going to say sexually active, but I mean, they tend to be very lustful individuals, and they can get involved in relationships for the wrong reasons. And that can lead to a very carnal relationship that is one-dimensional. So see how you do, if you do things like that. If you buy people things, buy them gifts because you want them to stick around. And I was going to even extend that to sex, like, having sex to keep that person in your life. Usually, I mean, we're in, when I'm recording this, it's 2023, so women may be just as likely to engage in a sexual relationship for its own sake as a man, but I still think that women's emotional needs can lead them to this. I don't personally think that Leo women are motivated to do that by and large. I think that if they are engaging in a sexual relationship and it's pretty much all that's there, that's what they want to do. But I would say definitely with the monetary things, because a Leo woman may be the one who is trying to get a man that way. Same-sex relationships, I think, are a little bit different. So I'm focusing on male-female relationships where that dynamic of, what each symbolizes is more easy to talk about. And, in those types of relationships, a woman who happens to be the bigger earner, that can lead to, especially if she is, doing this kind of thing, a man who is not really necessarily committed to the relationship, but they are more interested in the financial gain from it. And that is the danger of anybody who does this. Women are still tagged as gold diggers. And that always kinds of rubs me the wrong way, because the reason that women may have entered into relationships with that ulterior motive is because men used to, at least, maybe not now, were the bigger breadwinner. So the woman was the one who wanted that kind of lifestyle, and she felt like she couldn't give that to herself, or maybe she had a hard time supporting herself in general. Now it has changed a little bit, and you may see more of like the script being flipped, and the male being the one who is taking advantage financially of his partner in some cases, especially of the younger, like 20s and 30 somethings. But regardless of what is going on here, the person who is doing it, this is a form of manipulation, even if they don't realize it consciously, because there, in relationships, there has to be an energy exchange. If there is like one person who seems more devoted, so more emotionally invested in the relationship, who is more interested in contacting that person and being with that person than the other party, then you know that it is not an equal relationship. And the money aspect of it in and of itself is not a big deal, because sometimes it just so happens that one person makes more money than the other person, and yet that person really wants to have these fun experiences or go out to these nice places, and they're not expecting that other person, pay half, go Dutch or whatever. They want to do that out of the goodness of their heart. That's not what I'm talking about. And if you're a Leo person and you genuinely have no expectations, then that's not what we're talking about. But the problem is, even if you are sincere and just wanting to, share the wealth, if you will, the problem is that you may attract someone who is a taker, somebody who is just using you. So this is why it's better in the beginning of the relationship to be, more restrained, I would say, so that you can see that person, see if that person really cares about you for you. And that's why I say too with sex is that it's better just to be old fashioned and date and to really have long conversations than to jump into bed right away, because that gives a false sense of intimacy that may not be true, and it's premature. You're going there without really finding out if your other areas of life are matching up. And I don't give advice per se. I'm saying this really talking about my own feelings about these kinds of issues, is that people unnecessarily complicate their lives by these behaviors. But anyway, yeah, that's number 2. And number 3, I would say, is a false sense of self. Now, I could, mention probably 3 more for this sign and every sign. I just picked 3 things to talk about. But the reason that I wanted to mention the false self is because another thing about fire signs is that they can be arrogant. Now, I told you that I am a Sagittarius earlier, and as a fire sign myself, I have no doubt that I have been perceived that way because fire signs are very self-possessed, meaning that they tend to be in touch with themselves at an early age, and they are really connected to the self. Now, this is not really the true self necessarily. This is more of the self that they came here to be as a fire sign. And that's why fire signs are associated with creativity, because when you're creative, you are expressing your individual self. This is why it's always so egregious when artists copy somebody else, steal their ideas or what have you, because the whole magic of artistic creation is to share your essence with others. So anyway, this arrogance can come from Leo, especially if a Leo person doesn't feel successful in life. And this can lead to putting on airs, acting like the person is better than others. And really, inside, there is this neurotic sense of themselves as, like low self-esteem. But the neurotic tendency is needing to put up this front that makes you seem more confident than you really are. This is artificial, and because it's artificial, it means that the person is not being genuine, obviously, living in their authenticity. And you don't want to do that, because that will make it difficult for you to connect at a deep level with another person. So it can be a very lonely situation. It can be a very, it can be like living a lie, really. And it also can produce some negative, unpleasant characteristics, like kind of being stuck up and, talking down to people. Again, if you're listening for somebody else that you know who's a Leo, and you are nodding right now and thinking about them, understand that anybody who acts this way is actually insecure. But the thing is that if this is happening when you're young, you don't have the insight to understand this. And let's say it's a parent doing it to you, it can be very destructive, because the child can take it in and really believe that about themselves. So it's a bad situation. Now, what can you do if you have any of these traits? Well, obviously, you can go into therapy, and you might find, when I say therapy, I'm talking about talk therapy. And I'm also talking about with a conscious therapist who may be, maybe spiritual, or at least has this idea that life is about expansion and things like that. And rather than somebody who is just very clinical or mundane, those kinds of things, because this is about, to me, these kinds of traits are indicative of spiritual imbalance. In some cases, the person isn't on their spiritual path. They're trying so hard to be accepted by the world, and they may be going through a spiritual upgrade or an awakening, and they're finding that their ability to kind of hide behind certain behaviors like this no longer work. And it can make a person feel rather desperate, because their defenses are really down. Honestly, I think that the awareness of what is going on is the key, because knowledge is power. A lot of times we're kind of running these programs just like they have been programmed into us, which they have. A lot of times these things are coming from a long time ago, and we're running them unconsciously. And once we're conscious of them, we can catch ourselves. I mean, I have done this myself, where I have really begun to question certain things that I'm saying and thinking. And, it's progress. It might be Might have taken quite a while to get to this point, but at least it's progress. And so I honestly feel that, people going to therapy, some people go to therapy for years and they never really seem to heal because they're not getting to the heart of the matter. And plus, ultimately, it comes down to you. You have to believe it and adopt it. Nobody else can talk you into anything. So there's also energy blockages that could be um, part of the culprit here, and you might decide to go to an energy healer like a Reiki master or somebody who balances the chakras and things like that. Um, because the fourth chakra, the heart chakra, if it's blocked, it can really mess with a person's ability to give and receive love because um, maybe they're afraid. If you're a Leo and you have the moon in Scorpio, maybe you have, you know, the sun in Leo and Mars in Scorpio or something like that. You may have trust issues, and the way that you go about things could be counterproductive for what you're trying to accomplish. So, there's different paths. Ultimately, you have to really want healing, and um, be willing to do what it takes to get to, that goal. But anyway, I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.